welcome to the 50th anniversary of Mizpah Springs Hut. Thank you all for being here. And the first order of business really is to say thank you for the many people in the old Hutman's Association and on the old Hutman Steering Committee, OH Association Steering Committee for organizing this, and especially for the Planning Committee. So Abby, I turn it over to you with thanks for having us here.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to take a moment to thank all of you for coming. We are so excited to have you here. We hope that as we share our home with you, you share with us memories of when it was yours. It is so exciting and humbling to see a part of the tradition that we get to join in. At the beginning of that legacy is Willie Ashbrook, like you mentioned. I just want to take a moment. He couldn't make it here today. But to acknowledge him for all he's done and the high standards he set for the rest of us to come.
In recognition of your service as first Hut Master of Mizpah Springs Hut, immense contributions to the Appalachian Mountain Club, and an appreciation of your decades-long tenure as the OH Association's most enthusiastic and spirited member. Presenting at the 50th anniversary of Mizpah.
There you go.
There you go, Willie. I'm a little surprised that 46 years after I worked on as a member of the infamous Antioch construction crew and over at Lonesome, and I was such a pain in the ass to Bruce. So it's astonishing to me that 46 years later I get to present an award, and he may even take it from me. So in grateful appreciation for your immense contributions to the construction of Mizpah Spring Hut and the modernization of AMC's hut system, the OH Association confers upon you, alone amongst all huts managers, the title of He Who Must Be Obeyed. Presented at the 50th anniversary of Mizpah, this day.
Oh.
Building this hut, which was the first hut that had been built since 1932, required some things that just weren't understood elsewhere. Number one, the AMC didn't own anything in the notch. There was the Crawford House and the Mount Washington Hotel. The state had land down below, but there was nothing to work from. Also, this hut is rather unique in the fact that this is the first hut to have a radio that really worked, and started the radio network. Prior to that time, we had a telephone from the summit down to Lake of the Clouds, but there was no other real communication. Now, I don't really know in this day and age, when you think back, whether that was good or bad. And we go on, after that was the first airlift. Now, for us, it was really the introduction of the air age. But that first airlift was from in front of the railroad station. Now, George Hamilton was the air ace. I was not. I had been doing some flying and so forth, but he had been flying for the Air Force and had a little more knowledge. So he took care of lining up the helicopter, which had to come all the way up from Percy, Pennsylvania. It was a relic. Today they would be a museum piece with a 1,000-pound lift capacity, and that was about it. We could really, if we milked it down, didn't have any fuel, we could take one or two of these sections up, which weighed over 1,500 pounds. And the girders that go up over the top of the dining room and down, the two on this end of the building were 3 tons. And it wasn't hard getting them up on the helicopter, but the crew, some of them are right here that did it, we had to put them all up by hand. And the mason's helper is over there right now, Sid Haveley, and he was the one that collected all these damn rocks, roughly about 20 to 30 tons of them. And Tony Bukovich, who was here, the mason, for the 25th anniversary, passed on just a few years ago, and he laid out that 8-inch thick wall, and that was the show place out here with a pattern, and they spent half the summer laying out all the pieces, and Sid hauling all the rocks in. And I see God is helping them. If they have to do it again, God has exposed tons of rock in the trail all over again, so they don't have to go looking for them. During that same time, we had to get a little masonry material up there, 2,220 bags of cement, and everything was going fine. We moved them all in. We had to offload the truck and move them in on pallets inside. That was the first of 5 times each bag had to be handled before it finally got into place. One period during that, which should be mentioned, the helicopter broke down. So we had to keep the job going because Tony required a continuous bunch of cement all the time. So every available body we had in the hut system was subpoenaed over here to pack cement. They would pack one bag. The crew from Pinkham would pack a bag up. Here we had a midway point where they would leave a bag. And each day they made 1.5 trips. They either took a bag halfway and then brought it up halfway the next day, or took it all the way through. But each one, we had to get the material going. So 20 tons came up during that period of time on the backs of everybody. One of the things I was most thankful for, and thank heavens we worked on, was that nobody had a serious injury on this job. And Sid put out, I didn't put that in there, but Sid put out, thank God nobody got hurt. Okay, in a total of 15 months, from start to finish. In other words, part of it was the next year, we did the impossible and managed to get this goddamn thing built. And it's just to the compliment of all those that were here on the job, nobody else. They worked in nasty weather. Whenever there was work to be done, they did the work. We had our crew down at the bottom. Some nights I didn't get back and the crew didn't get back until dark because we had a good day for airlift. We'd airlift all day long. And this is what we've got to show for it. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
So I had the pleasure of working for and with Bruce in the 60s and 70s, and while I know that he gets a lot of credit for rebuilding the hut system, I think there's another legacy that Bruce leaves us, and that's a legacy of making sure the huts fit into the environment in which they're located. Bruce was the first one any of us knew who cared about things like the waste stream, who cared about sewage, who cared about water, and really was a very early advocate of what today we call sustainability. And I think the fact that the huts are still here after 50 and 100 years in this day when the standards of sustainability are higher than they used to be is because of Bruce's insistence way back then that we think about the impact of the hut. So while much of the construction and engineering credit goes to Bruce, I think the whole spirit of living in the environment is Bruce gets a lot of credit for that too.
Well, it looks like we have about 100 people here, and I think ultimately we can get everybody into the final photo.
So I think, as has been mentioned, a lot has changed over the past couple of years as to how the huts work. I find myself making gluten-free, dairy-free pancakes on a daily basis, so that feels different. I think a lot of things have stayed the same. One of them, the lasting relationships you make. And so on that note, I actually wanted to bring my first hut master up here to talk a little bit about his experience in the huts as well. This is Tobin Traver, everybody.
Hi, I guess I got roped into this last minute. I don't know what I can say that already hasn't been said. I mean, you guys all know what the huts mean. I don't think any of that has changed. For me, I think what our generation kind of embodies in the huts is the willingness to, well, I can't even say our generation, in total, all of us, the willingness to run out on the trail in the middle of the night, find a person with a dislocated elbow, bring them back to the hut. That's something that, to me, seems such an integral part of my hut experience that I know any of us would have done. But, you know, you don't pack 103,000 pounds in one.
A couple things that happened, and we thought we were always smarter than Pinkham. We all know that, right? And Bruce mentioned earlier the radios. And Mizpah was the repeater. At that point, all the huts had radios. But the Western Division could not hear Pinkham. So we get messages from Pinkham and relay them to the Western Division, and then the Western Division to us. And I don't know if they still do that today. Imagine that though. Anyway, we had a code. Bill and I were talking about it earlier. The Western Division would start off with the horses are running, which was black horse ale and unique. So it was my job as hut master to reform the Eastern Division. So I would obviously say, got that, one male, one M, one F. And no name. Reservation, one M, one F. And everybody in the Eastern Division then knew we were going to the unique, and off we went. And now it doesn't work in the afternoon. They got to do it, we thought we were like a company dime, and I'm sure we fooled Commander Marvel. And I don't think we fooled Bruce, he probably knew all about it at that point. We thought we were smarter than him.
The 10th anniversary was 1975, and we had a big celebration here. We actually sent a letter to the governor of New Hampshire, Mildred Thompson. I don't know if somebody. So Mildred came up here. Mildred and his wife came up here. We had a bagpipe. All of us in the crew were wearing kilts, and that became the tradition for Mizpah in 1975. So we all used to hike in kilts, and I walked into Peter Limmer's place, and you know, there was a backlog because that New York Times article came out, and it took like a year and a half. And Mrs. Limmer said, you know, what do you have underneath your kilt? And I said, well, you know, when my boots are done, I'll tell you. 2 weeks later.
I hope the crews have as much fun as we did today. And I think that they do.
Mizpah was a terrific jumping off point for me as a hut girl. I learned how to play well with others on a crew. I developed the packing stamina that would later serve me well on the Gill River Trail and the Valleyway. I figured out how to put together a decent 7-course meal for 5 dozen people. And most importantly, I continued to forge deep friendships that continue today. This is no small thing. When I told my friends in Massachusetts about this reunion, they were impressed by and a little envious of the fact that I had such a long history with so many wonderful people. So here's to all of you.